What's up guys, Lightning here with another PvP build video for you all. Today we're going to be looking at the Necromancer. It's a class that I've only recently gone back to playing. I used to have one a while ago but deleted it for more space, and I decided that I'd give it another go before the release of the Reaper that's coming out soon. So we'll jump straight into the build today. And wrong key. So first of all, looking at the equipment for this build, we will be using a dagger and a warhorn, and then for secondary we'll be taking a staff. With the runes for this, I put a sigil of blood on the dagger for the 50% chance on crit to steal health, extra survivability, because this build is very survivable. I then take the sigil of strength, 60% chance on crit to gain might. Might is a very good stat to stack up just for the extra damage, obviously. We then on the staff take the sigil of doom. Your next attack after you swap to this weapon while in combat inflicts poison for 8 seconds. We will be doing quite a bit with conditions as we're a Necromancer, and inflicting poison is always great, and we will be using the staff quite a lot in this, especially when we're actually on the nodes and we're trying to lock the nodes down. And we then take the sigil of energy. Gain 50% of your endurance when you swap to this weapon while in combat. Because we'll be moving around the map mainly using the dagger and warhorn and doing sort of opening strikes, we'll be switching to staff on the node quite a lot. And on the node, obviously, while we'll be fighting, we're going to want more survivability, and with the staff doing a lot of condition damage, that's why we apply the sigil of doom for extra poison. I then, for runes, take the rune of strength, so we get more power, more might, more durations, and you know, this is just basically so we can stack up our power a little bit and just try and deal as much damage as possible while maintaining being as tanky as possible throughout the rest of the build. And with this we use the Celestial Amulet. A lot of people have recently started using these on Necromancers because they're the perfect balance of trying to find a tanky build that does extreme damage. So if we look into specializations, at the moment I'm using Spite, Curses and Soul Reaping. So starting off with Spite, we have Reaper's Might as our first minor, which Shroud skill grants 1 might. It's nothing major, we do use Shroud quite often, but obviously it's only a minor. The first choice we actually take is Bitter Chill. Chilling a foe inflicts vulnerability. We'll be able to chill our foes quite often, especially using the staff. So vulnerability means they take a lot more damage, and it means it's easier for us to put damage out on them. The next minor is Death's Embrace. Inflict vulnerability when you strike a foe below the health threshold, deal more damage while downed. So we get a damage increase at 25%. We get a damage increase of 25% when they're below 33% health. We get a 25% damage increase while downed. We inflict 5 seconds of a vulnerability while they're below 33%. Again, it's only a minor, but it's actually quite useful and does synergize in with our build fairly well. I then take Chill of Death. Cast Spinal Shivers on a foe when attacking them while their health is below the threshold. So as long as your opponent is below 50% health, you chill your target and remove up to 3 boons, dealing extra damage based on the number of boons removed. This is amazing if you're fighting anyone like a Mesmer, a Guardian, or an Elementalist, because they are the 3 main classes that are just stacking boons at all times. Compared to the old days, it's very much boon and condition heavy in the meta of PvP still. It used to be very much just power builds everywhere, but conditions and being able to work conditions and boons are very important in today's metagame. The final minor is Siphon Power. Gain might when you stroke a foe below the health threshold, when the health threshold for this is 50%. So again, there's lots of health thresholds here that when you get them down to around half and a third health, lots of things are going to be going on passively that you don't have to pay attention to. And the final one we choose in this track is Signets of Suffering. Reduces the recharge on signets. Signets grant might when cast and convert boons to unaffected foes to conditions. So we get to convert 2 boons into 2 conditions instead, and it has a 20% recharge reduction. And that's just for casting signets. Then in Curses, first minor is Barb Precision. Critical hits have a chance to cause bleeding, and it increases the bleed duration. We do have a fairly good crit chance, and we will be critting fairly often. You know, we're not specifically designed to crit, so we're not going to be critting all the time, but we will crit a lot. So with this, we're going to be causing bleeding a lot, which is another condition to stick on someone, which again is going to synergize in with the build very well. We then take Plague Sending. When your conditions meet the threshold, your next critical hit will cast Plague Signet on your target. So conditions to trigger is 3. So as soon as we get 3 conditions on us, Plague Signet will activate, which sends your conditions to a foe, and it will send up to 5 conditions, and then we'll gain 3 stacks of might, and 2 of those conditions will convert to boons. So it's a great get out of jail free card, because I mean, Plague Signet is an amazing skill that we actually take on our bar as well. It's one of those things that we're going to try and keep pushing all of our conditions away, and we're going to try and maintain our conditions on the enemy, while keeping ourselves full of nice lovely boons that keep us alive longer. We then take Furious Demise as the next minor, which is gain fury when entering Shroud. We're going to enter Shroud a lot, and this increasing our crit chance just means it's going to synergize with things like when you crit, etc. Because Death Shroud is an amazing skill that Necromancers have. It's effectively a second health bar for us, and we're one of the tankiest classes in the game. We then have Path of Corruption. Shroud skill 2 now additionally converts boons into conditions. So when you go into Shroud and you're full of conditions, after sending off whatever you've got, when you've still got conditions to cleanse, skill number 2 is going to convert 2 of those into boons, just to keep us alive even longer. We're really starting to become a nightmare to deal with and to try and clear off the board. The problem they're going to have is the enemy. Generally we're going to be in team fights, because we thrive in team fights, and the enemy's not going to be picking us as first target to try and take out, but if they don't, we're going to be causing them lots of problems, pumping out conditions and just being free to run around and do whatever we like. Final minor is Target of the Weak. Increase critical hit chance for each condition on your foe. Gain condition damage based on your precision. So our crit chance is going to go up, and obviously when we crit, you've seen other stuff can happen. For every condition we put out, and obviously everything we do puts out conditions, and that's going to increase our crit chance, which is going to put more out. So it's a great minor to take. Obviously you don't have any other choices, but it fits perfectly well with the build. We then finally take Weakening Shroud. Cast Enfeeble when entering Shroud. Critical hits inflict weakness, and Enfeeble is bleed and weaken nearby foes. So when we go into Shroud, we're pumping out even more conditions, while we're converting conditions on ourselves into boons. It's a never-ending cycle with this build. And finally we take Soul Reaping, and the first minor is Gluttony. Increase life force gain from skills. So we gain an extra 10% life force from using skills, just as simple as that. And the more life force we gain, the quicker we can get into Shroud. Soul Marks. Marks generate life force when triggered. Marks are unblockable. Now marks are something that we use on staffs. Pretty much every single staff skill is a mark, and we're going to be generating 3% life force, and all of those marks we put down are unblockable. So whether or not a character wants to put up a guard skill or not, that mark is still going to trigger on them, which is horrendously broken when you're fighting for a node and you've got marks that take up the entire node. They have no choice but to trigger them just by trying to contest a marker. We then have Spectral Armor. Gain life force as you take damage. Removed when you enter Death Shroud. Also applies protection. So we gain protection, we gain extra life force, it's a stun breaker, and it lasts 6 seconds. And what that is taking Last Gasp is you gain Spectral Armor when your health falls below a threshold. So as soon as we drop below 50%, we gain 6 seconds of protection, we gain life force, it lasts 6 seconds, and it's a stun breaker. So it's another way to keep us alive and keep the fight going in our favour almost, as it gives us a bit more breathing room. We then take Vital Persistence. Life Force drains slower while in Shroud. Shroud skills recharge faster, which means we get to stay in Shroud longer and we get to pump off more skills more often, which makes perfect sense to take because we're going to be using Shroud quite a lot. Strength of Undeath, you do more damage while above the life force threshold. Maximum life force is increased, so we get an extra 15% maximum life force. We get a 5% increase if we maintain over 50% of our life force. Now you can jump in and out of life force whenever you please. So maintaining above 50% is fairly easy, and you should only really risk going into lower than 50% if you're really in trouble and you need to try and survive that a little bit longer. But generally you don't really need to if you're sticking to your team fights and you're pushing where, you know, you're turning those team fights into your, you know, your team's favour, etc. We then take Death Perception, increases critical hit chance while in Shroud, so we gain another 50% crit chance while in Shroud. So this means that while we're in Shroud, we're effectively at 100% crit chance, and we will be critting all the time. And as you can see with this, when we crit, lots of nasty stuff happens, and one thing, you know, so it means that we're going to be doing the maximum amount of damage possible while being as tanky as possible, which not many people enjoy too much when they see a Necromancer come running along. So we'll then look at the actual skills that I've chosen to take. So for a healing skill, we take Signet of Vampirism, heal when struck by a foe. Generally you can just keep that on passive, you won't really need to use it too much. However, I do tend to use this Signet just for the effect before entering Plague, because during Plague there's not much point in using it. I also tend to use Signet of Vampirism before entering Shroud, because again you can't really use it while in Shroud. But when you activate it, you heal yourself and mark a foe. Allied players will siphon life from that enemy. Generally you're not going to be using it unless you're about to go into Shroud or Plague though. And then take Spectral Armour, gain life force as you take damage, remove when you enter Death Shroud, also applies protection. So what happens is, you take 8% life force gain every time you take damage. It's also a stun breaker and you gain protection, as I've explained before. This is an amazing skill to take at the start of a fight, because generally, especially if you're going against like thieves and burst classes like that, 6 seconds of protection means that you're reducing 33% of the damage they put out, and generally when you get into a fight, they will do their full burst rotation at the second they get into combat. So you've got 6 seconds of reducing that damage and giving you that breathing space. And then take Plague Signet, transfer conditions from nearby allies to yourself as the passive. So while this is just sitting there, you're absorbing all the conditions that your allies are taking in. And then as you activate it, you transfer those conditions to a foe. So you transfer 3 conditions and you send off 5 because 2 of those get converted into boons. It's also a stun breaker and you gain 3 stacks of might. I then take Signet of Locust, you run 25% faster. Generally, I don't use it too often unless I'm in the middle of a team fight, so that passive means that we're just moving around the map quicker. But when you do activate it, obviously, we have the activation bonuses within the traits that I showed you, and this also means that you steal health from nearby foes, and because it's Signet, you gain might, you convert conditions, etc. And for the elite, we take Plague, where you become a virulent cloud that inflict multiple conditions on foes you touch. Entering this form destroys all minions and removes spectral effects and inflict bleeding on yourself. So while you're bleeding yourself in this form, you are also pumping out a huge amount of conditions that enemies generally can't keep up with unless you're going against someone extremely tanky or cleansy, like Guardians for example. The shout build I shared with you last week was literally everything you do, you're cleansing conditions. But apart from that, this generally tends to be the end of times for most players, because you gain 3 seconds of stability, you pump out poison passively, and all of the skills within this pump out other conditions. So if we pop into it, you'll see that you add bleeding to your Plague. So as you're floating around, that Plague's going to inflict bleeding. Add blindness to your Plague, which means a lot of players are going to be missing their attacks while they get affected by the Plague cloud. And then you can add cripple and weakness to your Plague, which means that they're going to be running around, they're going to be moving slower, and they're going to be taking more damage and dealing less damage. So then within Death Shroud we also have Life Blast, which is just a general attack, but you gain might through doing it. Dark Path, where you send out a claw, and if it hits a foe, you inflict vulnerability. You convert conditions into boon. You convert their boons into 2 conditions. You chill them and add bleeding. Doom, where you make your enemy flee. You have Life Transfer, where you steal life. You steal their life force to pump out your shroud duration longer. And Tainted Shackles, where you inflict torment and immobilize, and you can do that to 5 targets for 4 seconds. So that's the build, everyone. I will be showing you the build in action in the coming next couple of weeks or so, because I know that I do need to show you the Guardian in action as well. So I will be showing those very soon. Thank you all for the support that you've been showing me. I'm pleased to see that a lot of people are enjoying the builds. Please do speak up in the comments and let me know if there's anything else in particular that you would like to see, or if there's any other builds or classes you'd like to see, or if you want more PvP commentaries or anything. Please do speak up and let me know. If you've enjoyed the video, please click that thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.